Boy, is this your lucky day. One of my favorite techniques to use in SPSS is splitting data files, and that is what this screencast is about. As you know, before we get into deep analysis and associational relationships with data, one of the first things that we oftentimes do is to run basic descriptive statistics where we look at the mean of different variables. That's great if you want to know information about the whole data set, but oftentimes what we're primarily interested in doing is comparing means across different groups. For example, and using the example in front of the data set, or the data set that's sitting in front of you, I might want to know not only what percentage of Americans support the use of torture against suspects of terrorism. I might be interested in saying what's the difference between Republicans, Democrats, other types of partisans. So in other words, descriptive statistics for many different groups. And one of the things that SPSS allows us to do is to split the data file, to use its language, such that when it runs analyses rather than running for the whole group, what it'll do is run for each of the groups that we have specified by splitting the data as a whole. Let's make this more concrete by actually doing it. In the data set in front of you, there's a question in the original Pew questionnaire that asks whether or not you think that terrorism, or rather torture, can be ever justified under the circumstances in which you've got somebody who is suspected of terrorism. And the answers vary from never being justified to rarely being justified, all the way up to being often justified. And in the data set in front of you, I have coded this variable torture yes to, where a 1 is somebody who said anything from torture is rarely justified all the way up to it is often justified, whereas people who said that it was never justified were coded 0. And so 0 if you don't think it's ever justified, 1 if you think it's justified under at least some circumstances. So let's start off by doing what we might normally do to take a look at this variable and make sure it's coded right. We go up to descriptive statistics, we choose descriptives, and we choose the variable in question. And we've got our torture dummy, and we take it over, and we just run the statistics. And we've got the minimum, maximum, 0, 1, everything looks good. We've got 1,400 respondents, that's pretty good. Nobody's, dumped themselves out of the data set. What we're primarily interested in here is this mean, and because 1 meant that you supported torture and it's a dummy variable, what this means is that 0.7223 is the mean. 72% of the sample said that at least under some circumstances they support torture. So if I were putting this in a descriptive statistics, I'd have the mean at 0.7223, the standard deviation, and the minimum and the maximum. But again, I might want to compare groups, and in order to do that, the easiest way, just again, if you're not going to do any statistical comparison of means, but just to be able to put together a table together quickly, we might want to go ahead and split the data. So I'm going to go to Data, Split File. Notice that's not split into files, that's split file. I'm going to compare groups, and in the example that I gave you, I said we might want to look at partisan. And so once I do this and I hit OK, the data is now going to sort cases and split the file by party. That means if I rerun descriptive statistics or any other type of analysis in SPSS, what it's going to do is it's going to do it for each value of party. So it's going to run it for Democrats, it's going to run it for Republicans, it's going to run it for others. So let's go back and let's do the same analysis, descriptive statistics, supports torture dummy, hit OK. And look, this time, the reason why these labels are here is we previously labeled this variable, but what it does is it gives us the average for Republicans, Democrats, Independents, etc. And so what we find by this is that 90% of Republicans, of the 320 Republicans in the sample, supported torture under at least some circumstances. On the other hand, a rather starkly different percentage, 56%, or rather 57% of all Democrats did, of Independents, 74% did. Of people who had no preference at all, 61% did. Other party, notice there were only 5 of those. all 5 of them supported torture. So again, the key thing that you've learned how to do is you can run a descriptive statistics or any type of statistics that you're interested in on the sample as a whole, or you can break it out and you can run it into groups. Last thing that you need to know how to do before you can do analysis on the group as a whole again, you've got to go back and you have to compare everybody and turn off this split file. So we go back to data, go back to split file, and where it says compare groups, I'm going to click it on so that it will compare all groups. Notice as I hit OK, if I come back to this, party will stay in here if I want to toggle back and forth so that I'm doing analyses of everybody and then checking compare groups, so I don't have to put the party back. But once I've analyzed all groups and I hit OK, if I go back and I analyze descriptive statistics descriptives again, now it will run it back for everybody again. And that, my friends, is how you split a data set. Again, the most common reason for doing this is if you were trying to put together a descriptive statistics table quickly and you wanted to be able to compare a key value, in this case support for torture, across several different groups, looking at its mean number for each of those groups. And anyway, I hope you found this informative.